All right, so as we begin today, a couple things to keep in mind. If you still need to complete any work, quizzes, etc., make sure to have that in by the 23rd. Still give you credit for it if you get it in by then. Don't forget as well, the final 1 week from today, study guide is available on Blackboard. If you have questions, by all means get in contact with me. We'll spend some time Wednesday going through, talk about the final, help you think about some things to prepare for the final, but we'll focus on that on Wednesday. A few things to take a look at today related to the 21st century. We have been talking over the past two classes, today and last Wednesday, about different demographic changes that have been taking place in the 21st century. And as we noted, Christianity as a whole, somewhat declining between the year 2000 and 2010, but in some very real ways, increasing in other places. And as a whole, we can see Christianity probably increasing over the next half century, but much of that growth taking place in the global south, as it's called, places like Africa, parts of Asia, as well as Latin America. And so we talk about these demographic forecasts. Specifically, this one coming from Philip Jenkins' The Next Christendom, and looking at what, based on current trends and the way Christianity grows, the way religious movements spread, what is the likelihood, what are the possible statistics by the year 2050, so within the next 35 years. And we noted there that, in general, we'll probably be seeing, and some of the demographics current between 2010, when he published Next Christendom, and the current state seem to be indicating that growth in those areas. But proportionally, Christianity decreasing proportionately compared to other religions like Islam. Let's think, though, for the next several minutes, and then we'll talk about some other things globally. We'll pay attention to what's going on in the United States. Now, looking at, again, another poll, this time Gallup poll, looking at what is the demographic trends of Christianity and other religions as well. And we're looking here roughly at the post-World War II period. And these go up through 2008. So about 60 years. So the last 60 years of the 20th century into the 21st century, we see as a portion of the population in the United States, Christianity on the decline. From a rather high percentage in 48 of 91%, spikes a little in the late 50s, largely due to some post-war boom in Christianity, but from that point on, a steady decrease. Now, we still see Christians making up at least 3/4 of the population of the United States, even into the 21st century. So sizable majority. But remember, of course, that would include a wide variety of groups from a wide variety of perspectives. Some more liberal, some more conservative. It would also include some groups, probably like Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses. Even Jehovah's Witnesses wouldn't necessarily refer to themselves as Christians, but would often be connected with that group as far as poll numbers go. Now, what explains that decline? Now, when you look at some of these other numbers, they don't really help us too much. Hard to make out some of these, but this line right here, represents the percentage of American citizens who identify as Jewish. This lower kind of a, not quite black, but a very, very dark green. Largely remaining fairly stable over the past 70 years, right? So it's not an increase of Judaism. They don't, in this poll, break out Islam, but Islam probably would be increasing here, but still right around this little percentage in here, between 10 and 12%. So it's still a sizable group, but roughly about the same amount of Muslims in the United States as Jews. Over the next several years, I think we'll see more and more Muslims immigrating to the United States. But that's not enough to explain all of this. Perhaps, and this is where a lot of people are really interested in, people that are doing polls and people that study religion and the makeup of religion in the United States, you see this kind of lighter green line that tops out here at 12%. That is the number of people who, when asked what their religion is, will respond something along the lines of none. Right? So you see this kind of this color here is the percentage of nones. That number, over the past 40 years, has really begun to increase, and it's actually, as we'll see in some later charts, higher than that 12%, bordering close to 20%. And that is probably the number that has the most significance for understanding why Christianity in the United States has declined in such a rather significant way. The number of people identifying as no religious affiliation, which is reflected here in this next chart. So from the post-war period up through early 2000s, right, 2008, a general incline of the number of people that would identify as having no religious affiliation. Now, probably if we took the time, if we were studying American Christianity, we could find some reasons to explain some of these, especially these kind of drops. Right? Generally an upward trend, but then you have these troughs of, sudden drops and those kind of things. We could explain that from a couple of different things based on the time periods. But we see these people identifying as no religion. And that probably helps us understand why we see such a distinction in the number of Christians, not only in the United States, but also, we could also look at Western Europe. But that doesn't mean that in general, America is becoming, as a whole, less religious. There are still a lot of religious people in the United States. Another Gallup poll here, extending those numbers a little bit more, with more of a breakdown here with other religious groups. You see here about the, statistically more Jews than Muslims, but that would probably change. Mormons holding out at about 2%, a little bit higher now, but not that much significance. And then most of the Christian groups would be Protestant or Catholic, with that also including a variety of groups. So still, most people would identify as some sort of Christian group in the United States. Now, in thinking about, we have a large group of people identifying as Christian, even broadly Christian, most Mormons would identify as Christian, and thinking about how often it is that they are involved in religious services. Right? Now, this chart, of course, provides us with other religions. We're thinking mostly Christian. If we think of one aspect of being a Christian being you're involved with other people who are Christians in some sort of regular way, then we have some rather interesting statistics presented here and in some of the other numbers that we'll look at here in just a minute. When we think about this idea of 21st century Christianity in the United States at this moment, what does it mean to be a Christian in the 21st century in the United States or in Western Europe. One of the things that we see here on this chart is that for a lot of people, it's not that aspect of meeting together. Being Christian is something that is more individualistic. So if you look at this number, this chart showing us how often do you attend religious services? How often do you attend religious services? Now, predominantly, we're interested in these two numbers as well as this one to some extent. Mormons claim, based on this Gallup poll, that they're attending, 80% of Mormons attend at least monthly. Okay? Now, again, maybe we could debate, well, how committed is that? Protestants say about 64% of them attend at least monthly. Catholics, about 60% attend at least monthly. And then, of course, you can see the corresponding monthly or more often. And then only about 19% of Muslims say they never attend religious services, about 35% Protestant, about 39% Catholic. Which, what we're saying there is about 4 out of 10 Christians, give or take, Protestant and Catholic, don't attend religious services. Or they don't frequently attend, at least monthly. And so a sizable amount of people in the 21st century don't see the importance of gathering together with people like faith as a part of what it means for their Christian identity. They identify as Christian, they identify as Protestant, they identify as Catholic, but they don't regularly attend. But there's some other things that are rather interesting as well. If we break down that by percentage of people who attend weekly, we find some even more interesting information. This is a Pew data now, giving you a breakdown of people who attend at least weekly or more often, at least monthly or yearly, seldom or never, and then a few people that didn't really want to answer that question. And if you look at it weekly, and these statistics have held up for quite a long time, even longer than this 10-year period that they have. Around 40% of Christians claim to attend at least weekly religious services. But some interesting sociological studies have been done which have demonstrated that it appears that people are claiming on these surveys to attend more often than they actually do. That based on these sociological studies, which went beyond just asking somebody, how often do you attend, but investigated and did journals and did some other work, and I can show you the studies online if you're interested. That's probably only about 20% of Christians, right? People identify as Christians that attend weekly, right? So the claim is 4 out of 10. But it's only 2 out of 10 that actually attend weekly or more. And so Christians think they're attending, or at least claim they're attending. And not all of it is lying to make yourself look good. Some of it is people actually thinking they attend more often than they do. So worship attendance seems to be an issue where Christians are more and more unlikely to consider it to be an important part of who they are in the 21st century. Again, just this last chart just kind of gives you an idea of some of the different trends going on. A little bit more broken down here. Still talking about the United States. This also from Pew Research up through 2012. We saw about this trend again. That Gallup poll, right, went up to 2008. Right? And so you can see that the trend is continuing down, largely because this number is going up. Protestants, around 50% identified as Protestant. Evangelicals, about 20% of that 50%. Mainline, about 15%. They often separate out African American Protestant groups. But many of those African American Protestant groups would be similar to evangelicals in their theology, and some of them would be similar to mainline. But it's a breakout here to kind of give you some idea of racial issues. Catholics, about 22% of the United States is Catholic, about 2% is Mormon. Now, we talked about this number, right? The unaffiliated, the nuns, which are getting close, and probably at this point, if they did another survey, would be about 20%. So 1 out of 5 people in the United States identify as having no religious affiliation. But if you look at this number, the atheists, right, people that claim there is no God, it's going up, right? It has increased, but it's still, it's only about 2% of the United States is atheist. About 3% agnostic, right? People that don't know, they're not sure. But it's this number, nothing in particular, who are probably very religious, very spiritual, would be eclectic in their spirituality, perhaps. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them would be kind of, I'll pick some things from Christianity, I'll pick some things from Buddhism, right, and kind of mix and match. So that number doesn't mean that 20% of the United States is not religious. It means that about 14%, 15% don't identify as a specific religion. Again, kind of another way to look at it with this chart breakdown, right? The 15 going on 20% of people that don't identify in the United States, a sizable chunk of that is people that are nothing in particular, right? The agnostic atheists roughly staying about the same. So it's not a mass departure of people to atheism, but it is probably a mass departure of people from wanting to identify with Christianity in the United States and with other religions in general. When we think then about the breakdown of these people that are nuns, unaffiliated, where is it that most of these people are age-wise? So the lighter color here on this right-hand side represents people that have some affiliation with religion and the age groups. The left side, the darker side, representing those that claim no affiliation. But when we look at people who are 65 plus, older than 65, mostly here we're talking baby boomers and the so-called greatest generation, the people that were involved in World War II. 90% of those people claim some sort of religious affiliation. Only 9% unaffiliated. The lower half of the baby boomers, still about 84%, claim some sort of affiliation, with about 15% claiming to be unaffiliated. When you get to Generation X, which is where I am, kind of right in the middle there now, 77% of us are still affiliated. We still claim some sort of affiliation, but we've got to that 20%. Like 1 in 5 of my generation claim no affiliation. But when we look down further than that, this is where a lot of people are starting to say, what's going on here? Because about 1 out of 3 of the millennial generation and Generation Y don't have a religious affiliation. Now, 2/3 still do. You don't hear that. Right? What you hear on the news is 1 out of 3, instead of 2/3 still. But the most place, the place where it seems to be where the most unaffiliated are is in the so-called millennial generation. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk here in just a few minutes about younger evangelicals. Because I think some of the things that we're seeing with younger evangelicals are evidences of a general approach to religion going on in the millennial generation. What questions or comments do you have? Anything I need to clarify? Remember, what I'm looking for you to know are the general trends. Things like the number of unaffiliated are going up. That most percentage of people that are most unaffiliated are that millennial, the 18 to 29-year-olds. Christianity in general is on the decline in the United States. That's the kind of things I want you to know. I'm not going to ask you specific percentages or anything like that, but general trends.